Funding for Texas Monthly Talks is provided in part by the law firm and public policy practice of Vincent & Elkins, LLP, providing legislative, regulatory, and public finance counsel for complex business challenges. Vincent & Elkins, online at velaw.com. And by Public Strategies Incorporated, managing campaigns for corporations around the clock, around the world. And J.P. Morgan Chase, the state's largest financial institution, serving large and small businesses, governments, schools, churches, and individual Texans just like you for more than 135 years. And the MFI Foundation, improving the quality of life within our community. And the Matson McHale Foundation, in support of public television. And also by the Alice Clayburgh Reynolds Foundation, proud to be a founding partner of Texas Monthly Talks. And viewers like you. Thank you.
I'm Evan Smith, the editor of Texas Monthly. The last time Al Franken was in Austin and a guest on this show, Air America affiliates had just gone on the dial in several Texas cities, and the proposition that a liberal counterpart to conservative talk radio could thrive during George W. Bush's polarizing presidency was yet to be tested. A year and a half later, we know a few things. One, Air America is, from a business standpoint, a bit of a shaky operation. Two, a Rush Limbaugh-sized audience has not yet materialized on the left. Three, despite 1 and 2, 55-year-old Franken is more of a household name than ever, with an even bigger following than during his days as an Emmy Award-winning writer and performer on Saturday Night Live. Maybe not any bigger than his 5 best-selling books had already made him, but The Al Franken Show, which airs weekdays 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., certainly made him the worthy subject of a new documentary film, Al Franken, God Spoke. And both the show and that Bush presidency I referred to have made Franken, who was once upon a long time ago a Republican, a possible, if not likely, Democratic candidate for the U.S. Senate from his home state of Minnesota in 2008. When we caught up with Al again in late September, he was in familiar form, eager to banter about any number of timely topics, outraged at the drop of a hat, and extremely funny. Strap yourselves in for a memorable half hour. A conversation with Al Franken on this edition of Texas Monthly Talks. Essentially do a version of that. This will be a fun night. Okay. You work that? I got the call. It's on the one. It's on PBS. Lewis. And then I stopped my show to get back to it, but it's okay. It's all right. Everybody please take your seats. All right, good. Al, nice to see you back in Austin.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
When you were here last, you were just getting the Air America affiliate in Austin up.
Right.
This is, as you pointed out, KOKE or Coke.
Thank you very much.
And things were well. Now, I have read the news in the last couple of weeks that maybe things with Air America are not so good. Is this true? Help me understand.
Well, there's currently a cash flow problem. So, but, you know, the right-wing blogs went with we're going bankrupt, and
right.
We haven't so far. So we're gloating.
Yeah.
But I've flown United. They've been bankrupt. And,
planes aren't falling out of the sky, fortunately.
Yeah,
right?
So we'll see. You know, the Fox News Channel, which is now celebrating its 10th year, lost like $500 million its first couple of years. Right. So, you know.
Now, there was a story on a non-right-wing blog that said you're not getting paid. Am I getting a little personal here if I ask
No, that was me stupidly acknowledging. I actually said, because I didn't know what was going on. I said, what's going on? I said, I think we're having a cash flow problem because there's no cash flowing to me.
Was it a line or was it true?
It was both. Everything's okay unless my kids need new shoes.
Okay, well, let's hope. Yeah. Now, I think the Dallas affiliate may not be on the... It sounds like maybe they're...
Well, this happens all the time, too. This is the Dallas affiliate was evidently bought by a Catholic concern, and we're not a Catholic network.
Really?
Yeah, believe it or not. We have Catholics on it all the time. But right-wing bloggers, or the right wing will go like, Franken lost Dallas. That shows it's not working. So I have about 1.5 million distinct different listeners for every week, and that's not what Rush gets. Rush gets 10 times as much, and but my listeners tend to listen for longer.
That's good.
Yeah.
Leaving aside this issue of the financial situation at Air America, what have you learned in the time that you've done this about the prospects for a progressive version of what has been done so successfully on the other side for all these years? Because this was really a pretty good leap forward in that direction.
It was. I think we made some big mistakes at the beginning. One of which is we had a crook heading up the thing.
You think that's a mistake, really?
Well, that was, yeah. I mean, I didn't know it. There was a guy from Guam named Evan Cohen, and he led us all to believe that there was enough capital there to keep us going without making a profit for 3 years, and it turned out to be 3 weeks. And so I think that there was an aspect of it being stillborn at the very beginning. Now, we did get off the ground, and we have in the last 2.5 years built a big audience.
Right.
But I think that beginning has hurt us from all along. I'm very happy with my show, and I really enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
And
it's a big time commitment.
Yeah, it's very, it's almost all consuming, except I'm doing other stuff too. But I really enjoy the 3 hours. I have amazing guests, and when I said, okay, I'm going to be on for 3 hours a day, I might as well use it to learn something. So that's what I really do. Is I try to have a lot of authors on. I try to learn as much as I can about issues, of course, are interest to me, but issues that I just feel are important. So I feel like I've read nearly every book on Iraq that I can. Mm-hmm. And it amazes me how little it seems that when I watch a Senate debate or something, I mean like the two candidates debate, either how little they know or how little they're willing to discuss what's really happening. Mm-hmm. And I find it shocking. I find it shocking how, in doing the reading about the history of this, how little the president knew going into the war, and how little his advisors knew, and how little people like Bill Kristol knew, and people urging us into the war. Bill Kristol said, about a week after the war started on Terry Gross, he says, there's this pop sociology that the Sunnis and the Shias can't get along, and that the Shia want to establish some kind of fundamentalist Islamic regime.
Yeah.
And there's almost no evidence for that at all. Well, Saddam murdered 300, and who's a Sunni, murdered 300 Shias after, and we left. So there's some resentment between the Shias and the Sunnis that shouldn't be so hard to figure out why it's there. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing to me. Then if I listen to the right-wing shows, again, how little they know. I've done 3 USO tours to Iraq, and I'm doing my 4th in December. And I think I know how to ask generals what's going on, and I know how to talk to troops to find out something, but I don't pretend that I'm going to figure out what's going on in my 4 days there. 21% of Americans say they get a majority of their news from talk radio. I read that in 2003, and that's why I decided to do 3 hours a day.
Right. Because
I said somebody's got to do it.
Right. Someone's got to be, and obviously people are listening.
Well, yeah, but I mean, they'll say obviously people aren't listening.
Yeah. But you have to, of course, blame not just the people who are on the air and don't know, but also the people out in the country listen to it and they go, oh, okay, fine. They don't actually question it. And in fact, the media, right, the big newspapers, they're not doing much of a job of persuading people that what they're hearing from these folks is not sufficient.
The right has done a great job in making the mainstream media afraid of its own shadow. So people in the mainstream media don't want to be labeled a liberal. God forbid, it'll ruin my career. You know, and there is this kind of closed circle that they have that they've achieved, which is very interesting because I have Republican friends, right-wing friends, some smarter than others, who will have bought this, that the New York Times is a left-wing paper. Right. Now, they don't look at its horrible record in the lead up to the Gulf War. They don't, or for that matter, the Washington Post. So what they've decided is that the New York Times has an agenda, the Washington Post has an agenda, the mainstream media has an agenda. My brother lives in Paris, his wife is Dutch, she has a friend who she grew up with who lives in Minneapolis. So when my brother and his wife and family come over to Minneapolis to visit, they stay there. Lovely, lovely people, really generous, real right-wing, okay? So I'm talking to the son, and the son's like 18 years old. He's an intelligent kid, and he says, I think there are weapons of mass destruction there. I go, why? And he goes, well, it's a big desert, and they could have buried them somewhere or taken them over to Syria. And I go like, did you read the Dulfer report? He goes, Dulfer report?
Well, he's a kid.
He's 18.
Yeah.
He's not a kid. He's 18. He's old enough to go there
to read
and
the
die.
Dulfer report.
He's old enough there to go there and die.
Yeah.
So I said, did you read the Dulfer? What's the Dulfer report? Well, do you know that we had the Iraqi survey project? What's that? Have you? Okay, and I walk them through all of it, and I go, let's Google it. Let's go on Google. DUELFER, and he looks up, and the first thing that he finds is the report itself, and the second thing is like a New York Times article about it. He goes, oh, well, I see that the drive-by media used it.
Drive-by media?
Yeah, this is a new Rush Limbaugh thing. And so his immediate thing was, this can't be true because it was in the New York Times. This must be propaganda because it's in the New York Times. I like this kid. He's a good kid, you know. He's just victim to this closed circle of anything that's in the mainstream media that doesn't agree with my right-wing worldview isn't true.
Is there not a version of this on the left, though? If you read some of the left-leaning blogs, there's a bit of the instinctive distrust of anything in the mainstream media that doesn't agree with their worldview, too. Right? A little bit?
A little bit. It certainly isn't successful. and I just don't think it's... I mean, I run into left-wing people at events I do all the time that come up to me with crazy conspiracy theories. The 9/11 was a government plot, was a Bush plot. I go, no, come on, just get over that. Don't think.
Don't even say it out loud.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
yeah.
Shouldn't Bush be tried as a war criminal? Okay, I don't know. No. Let's just, get in, win the House, and so we can do oversight. And so we can impeach him, huh? No, people don't want to impeach the president. They just want oversight so that we can actually run the government the way it's supposed to be run. One of my biggest problems with this Congress is that it hasn't done its oversight. And one of the biggest problems, again, this is about Iraq. Harry Truman called war profiteering treason, and it is. And during World War II, when we had a Democratic president, Democratic Senate, Democratic House, Harry Truman headed a committee that looked into war contracting and saved the equivalent of billions of dollars and a lot of lives. And if you read Blood Money, if you read this new one I haven't read yet, which is from the Washington Post guy, Imperial City, something in the Emerald City, the Reconstruction is a scandal. And it's cost our guys their lives. And our Congress did not do its job. And we had no-bid contracts going to Halliburton for 5 years. You don't give a no-bid contract for 5 years. They were hiring Bush loyalists. They had a guy, it would prospective people to go work in Iraq in the Coalition Provisional Authority, they would ask them who they voted for. Do they vote for Bush or Gore? They would ask them their stand on Roe v. Wade.
Is that right?
Yeah. So they were having a 24-year-old kid who knew nothing set up the stock market in Iraq. And so there's corruption, there's incompetence, and every dollar that didn't go for getting the electricity up, getting the sewage taken care of, getting the water up, putting Iraqis to work, every dollar that didn't go that way fueled the insurgency by alienating the Iraqi people. And it's killing our men and women. So this Republican Congress has blood on its hands for not doing its job. And it's not just the administration. It is the Congress. And it is the people who are in charge of those committees that should be doing the oversight.
Are the Democrats sufficiently running on that against Republicans?
No. No. Every few months, the Democrats put up a bill saying that we should set up a Truman Committee. And it's voted down on party
lines. Yeah.
One guy who votes for it is Jim Leach of Iowa. He's a Republican, a great guy. I don't know why he's not a Democrat, but he's a terrific guy. And if I ever gave money to a Republican, it would be him, but I won't.
But you won't. Make sure you hear that.
Yeah. I'll give it to his opponent. I know Jim Leach still, he votes for the Republican leadership. He votes for Denny Hastert. I don't want that.
Yeah. So you refer to giving money to candidates. You have moved back to Minnesota, started a political action committee, Midwest Values Pact.
Right.
The purpose of which is what?
Raise money for Democrats.
I mean, it seems obvious.
Take back the Congress.
Right. And so who are you high on these days? Who have you been giving money to?
Well, we've been giving a lot of money to House candidates because we believe we have a chance better chance of winning the House, but I think we have a chance of winning the Senate. I mean, and the Senate is easier, there's fewer. So we can, it's if anyone who's been following this knows who we've been giving money to. You're
thinking, you give money to, please pronounce her name for me because I'm going to get
Klobuchar.
it wrong. Klobuchar in Minnesota?
Yeah, Amy Klobuchar.
Who is running for the open seat, you've given money to her.
Oh, yeah.
Give money to John Tester in
Absolutely.
Montana, to Bob Casey in Pennsylvania.
I'm not sure if we've given money to them yet, but we will if we haven't. We're going to keep an eye on those polls.
Or do you have
Claire McCaskill, Sherrod Brown,
Missouri, Sherrod Brown in Ohio,
White House in Rhode Island,
Webb in Virginia.
So
all the big races where the Democrats are either ahead or have a chance of.
Yeah.
Right. But you said mostly House.
Mostly House in terms of the number of candidates, sure. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Why'd you do this, and why now, or why when you began it as opposed to previously? Because of course people see this as a precursor to your running for office yourself, right?
Sure. This is what I may run for the Senate in Minnesota in 2008 against Norm Coleman, who, by the way, has the #1 oversight position in the Senate.
I was going to ask you about that. So he is one of the people you're referring to.
Absolutely.
Right.
He heads the permanent subcommittee on investigations in the Senate, which is. The Truman Committee was a precursor to that.
Right.
Scandalous what he has not done. Really scandalous. So I figure that I don't know if I'm going to do this or not, but I don't want to arrive at the moment where I decide that I'm going to do it and not have done the things I should have done. But all the things that I am doing in preparation for that day when I make a decision and decide to or not to,
right.
I want to be helpful to the Democratic Party and to the country.
Right.
And so this seemed like something where I could use my status, my celebrity status, or whatever you want to call it, and so I can show up at a place and raise money.
Right. And you've raised money not just for the PAC, but you've also done a lot of events for Democrats around the country.
Yeah, man, most of what I do is not for the PAC, and a lot in Minnesota. I've done a lot of, I'll show up at a Senate district bean feed, and instead of
a local deal, I mean, like your state senate.
Yeah, state senate.
Yeah.
They're